This morning, you woke up in a world where Nelson Mandela died in prison, in the 1980s where Darth Vader said, "Luke, I am your father," and where the Monopoly man has always worn a monocle. Except none of those things are true in this reality. Yet millions of people share these exact same false memories with crystal clear certainty. What if I told you that some researchers suggest these collective misrememberings might be more than simple tricks of the mind to adapt? Welcome quiet exploration of one of the most fascinating phenomena of our time, where the boundaries between memory, reality, and consciousness blur in ways that challenge everything we think we know about the nature of existence itself. I'm here to guide you through this gentle journey into the mysterious realm of the Mandela Effect and the tantalizing possibility of parallel universes. Whether you're settling in for the evening, taking a contemplative break, or simply allowing your mind to wander into the extraordinary, you've found the right place. Tonight, we'll drift gently through the landscape of collective false memories, explore the cutting edge of quantum mechanics, and consider whether our consciousness might occasionally slip between different versions of reality. This isn't about proving or disproving anything definitively. Instead, it's an invitation to wonder, to question, and to expand your perception of what might be possible in this endlessly surprising universe. Picture this scene from 2009. Paranormal researcher Fiona Broome is attending a conference, making casual conversation about historical events. She mentions her vivid memory of Nelson Mandela dying in prison during the 1980s. She remembers the news coverage, the funeral mourning. She, the global, can see it all clearly in her mind's eye. But here's where the story takes an unexpected turn. Instead of politely correcting her mistake, the people around her begin nodding in recognition. They remember it too. Not just one or two people, but dozens of conference attendees sharing the same detailed, impossible memory. This moment sparked something that would ripple across the internet and into the collective consciousness of millions. Broome coined the term Mandela Effect to describe what seemed to be happening, a phenomenon where large groups of people remember the same thing incorrectly, with startling consistency and confidence. What makes this particularly intriguing is the nature of these shared false memories. They're not vague impressions or fuzzy recollections. People describe them with the same clarity and emotional weight as their most treasured true memories. They can recall specific details, emotional responses, even where they were when they learned the information that, according to our current reality, never actually happened. Take a moment to consider your own memories. How certain are you about the spelling of your favourite childhood cereal? Do you remember it as Fruit Loops or Fruit Loops? What about that classic peanut butter brand? Is it Jiffy or Jif? These might seem like trivial details, but for many people, discovering their memories don't match current reality creates a profound sense of disorientation. The Mandela Effect has grown far beyond Fiona Broome's initial observation. Online communities have catalogued thousands of examples, from movie quotes and song lyrics to corporate logos and geographical features. People gather to share their experiences, to validate each other's memories, and to grapple with the unsettling question of how so many minds could be wrong about the same things in the same ways. Let's dive deeper into some of the most compelling examples that have captured public attention. These aren't random mistakes or simple misrememberings. They follow patterns that challenge our understanding of how memory works. Consider the case of Darth Vader's famous revelation to Luke Skywalker. If you ask most people to quote this iconic moment from The Empire Strikes Back, they'll confidently say, "Luke, I am your father." It's been referenced countless times in popular culture, parodied in comedies and quoted by fans for decades. Yet if you go back and watch the actual scene, Vader says, "No, I am your father." This isn't a subtle difference in pronunciation or a matter of interpretation. It's a completely different sentence structure that changes the dramatic weight of the moment. The collective memory includes Luke's name, making the revelation feel more direct and personal. The actual line is a response to Luke's accusation, creating a different emotional dynamic entirely. Food brands provide some of the most numerous examples of the Mandela Effect. The beloved marshmallow cereal, treat that millions of Americans grew up with, is remembered by many as Rice Krispie treats. Yet the actual product has always been Rice Krispies treats with an S at the end. Similarly, those chocolate sandwich cookies that pair perfectly with milk are double stuff Oreos, not double stuff as many remember. These examples might seem trivial until you consider how often we encounter these products. These are items we see regularly, purchase frequently, and consume as part of our daily routines. Our brains have had countless opportunities to encode the correct information, yet the false memories persist with remarkable consistency across large populations. As you reflect on these examples, you might notice a curious sensation, perhaps a slight cognitive dissonance, a moment where your memory insists on one version while evidence points to another. This feeling, this gentle friction between what we remember and what appears to be true, is at the heart of why the Mandela Effect has captured so much attention. Dr. Wilmer Bainbridge, an assistant professor of psychology at the University of Chicago, has dedicated considerable research to understanding why our memories betray us in such systematic ways. Her work reveals something profound about the nature of human cognition that extends far beyond simple forgetfulness. According to Dr. Bainbridge, our brains don't function like recording devices, faithfully capturing and storing exact replicas of our experiences. Instead, memory is reconstructive. Each time we recall something, we're essentially rebuilding that memory from fragments, filling in gaps with expectations, assumptions, and associations that feel logical to us in that moment. This process explains why many people remember the Monopoly man wearing a monocle. Rich, distinguished gentlemen from the early 20th century typically did wear monocles in popular culture. Our brains, drawing on these cultural associations, reconstruct the memory to include details that make sense within that context, even if those details were never actually present. The power of suggestion plays another crucial role in how false memories spread and solidify. When we hear someone else describe their memory of an event, especially if their recollection differs from our own, our brains may incorporate elements of their version into our own memory reconstruction. Social media and online discussions amplify this effect exponentially, allowing false memories to propagate through communities at unprecedented speed. But here's where the scientific explanations, thorough as they are, begin to feel incomplete to some observers. The sheer scale and consistency of certain Mandela effects to stretch seem beyond what we might expect from normal memory reconstruction. When thousands of people independently remember the same fictional details about real events, some researchers and theorists begin to wonder if we're dealing with something more complex than cognitive bias. This is where the conversation becomes particularly fascinating. While mainstream science offers compelling explanations for false memories, there remains a small but persistent gap between theory and the lived experience of those affected by the Mandela Effect. It's in this gap that more speculative ideas about parallel universes and timeline shifts find their foothold. To understand how parallel universe theories might relate to the Mandela Effect, we need to venture into the strange and counterintuitive world of quantum mechanics. This isn't about making claims or drawing definitive connections, but rather exploring the conceptual framework that some interpretations suggest could theoretically allow for multiple realities. At the quantum level, particles exist in what physicists call superposition, essentially occupying multiple states simultaneously until they're measured or observed. This isn't just theoretical speculation. It's been demonstrated countless times in laboratory experiments. A photon can travel through multiple paths at once, an electron can spin in opposite directions simultaneously, and quantum systems can remain in these undefined states until interaction with their environment forces them into definite configurations. The many worlds interpretation of quantum mechanics, first proposed by physicist Hugh Everett in 1957, suggests that these quantum possibilities don't collapse into single realities. Instead, every possible outcome of every quantum event creates a separate universe. In this framework, there's a universe where you chose coffee this morning instead of tea, another where you took a different route to work, and countless others where history unfolded in subtly or dramatically different ways. Everett's original analogy compared this process to an amoeba splitting into daughter cells. If amoebas had consciousness, each daughter would remember an identical history up until the point of division, then develop its own unique experiences from that moment forward. In quantum terms, we might all be like those daughter amoebas, carrying memories of shared experiences up to certain branching points, then diverging into separate realities. This interpretation remains highly speculative and is not universally accepted among physicists. However, it provides a conceptual framework that some researchers and theorists find intriguing when considering phenomena like the Mandela Effect. The idea suggests that memories of different timeline versions might occasionally bleed through from parallel universes where events unfolded differently. Recent developments in quantum computing have added another layer to this discussion. Google's quantum chip, which recently solved computational problems that would take conventional supercomputers longer than the age of the universe to complete, has led some researchers to suggest that quantum computation might indeed occur across multiple parallel universes. While this interpretation is controversial and far from proven, it demonstrates that the concept of parallel realities continues to find support in some scientific circles. One of the most profound puzzles in quantum mechanics involves the role of observation in determining reality. The observer effect suggests that the very act of measuring a quantum system changes its behavior, challenging our classical understanding of objective reality existing independently of conscious awareness. This doesn't necessarily mean that human consciousness creates reality in a literal sense, as some popular interpretations suggest. The observer in quantum mechanics can be any interaction that provides information about a system, including purely physical processes that occur without any conscious being present. However, the relationship between consciousness and quantum mechanics remains one of the most debated topics in physics. Some interpretations explore the possibility that consciousness itself might play a more fundamental role in shaping reality than we currently understand. While this remains highly speculative and lacks scientific consensus, it opens intriguing questions about how our awareness might interact with the quantum substrate of existence. As you consider these ideas, take a moment to notice your own experience of consciousness right now. You're aware of reading these words, of the thoughts arising in your mind, of the sensations in your body. This awareness itself is one of the deepest mysteries in science. We don't fully understand how subjective experience emerges from objective physical processes, or whether consciousness might have properties that extend beyond what we can currently measure. The gap in our understanding of consciousness creates space for speculation about its potential role in phenomena like the Mandela Effect. While we must be careful not to make claims that exceed our evidence, we can remain open to the possibility that consciousness and reality interact in ways we haven't yet discovered. This is where our exploration begins to touch on something profound about the nature of existence itself. Whether the Mandela Effect represents false memories, glimpses of parallel universes, or something else entirely, it points to the malleable nature of our experience and the mysterious relationship between mind and reality. As we prepare to delve even deeper into these mysteries, remember that we're not seeking absolute answers, but rather expanding our capacity for wonder. The universe has consistently proven to be stranger and more beautiful than our theories predict, and consciousness remains one of its greatest enigmas. As you settle deeper into this exploration, let yourself consider the thousands of people who claim to have experienced something far more dramatic than simple false memories. These individuals describe moments of acute awareness when reality itself seemed to shift around them, leaving them stranded in a world that feels subtly but unmistakably different from the one they remember. Sarah, a teacher from Oregon, describes waking up one morning to discover that her favourite coffee shop had always been located 2 blocks further down the street than she remembered. Not moved recently, but according to everyone around her, including long-time residents, it had been in that location for over a decade. She could clearly recall walking to the closer location hundreds of times, yet no evidence of its previous existence remained. These accounts, while unverifiable and lacking scientific support, share remarkably consistent elements. People describe a moment of disorientation, often accompanied by physical sensations like dizziness or nausea, followed by the gradual realization that multiple details of their environment have changed in ways that others insist were always true. Marcus, a software engineer from Toronto, reported experiencing what he interpreted as a timeline shift during a particularly stressful period at work. He describes looking at his computer screen and suddenly feeling as though the room was spinning. When the sensation passed, he noticed that several small details in his office were different. The placement of a plant, the colour of a colleague's coffee mug, the text on a motivational poster. When he asked others about these changes, they looked at him with confusion, insisting that everything had always been exactly as it appeared. While these experiences cannot be scientifically validated, they point to something fascinating about human consciousness and perception. Whether these represent genuine shifts between parallel realities, complex psychological phenomena, or something else entirely, they highlight the fluid nature of our subjective experience of reality. Dr. Bainbridge's research suggests that stress, sleep deprivation, and emotional intensity can all affect how our brains encode and retrieve memories. During periods of high stress, our attention becomes more selective, potentially causing us to miss details we would normally notice. When our awareness returns to its typical breadth, these previously unnoticed elements might feel new or changed, creating the subjective experience of a reality shift. Yet this explanation, thorough as it may be, doesn't fully satisfy everyone who has had these experiences. The specificity and consistency of the changes reported, combined with the profound sense of certainty that accompanies these memories, creates a compelling puzzle that science hasn't entirely resolved. Take a moment to reflect on your own experience of reality. How stable does it feel? Have you ever had moments where something seemed subtly wrong or different, even if you couldn't quite identify what had changed? These experiences, whether we interpret them as memory glitches or something more mysterious, remind us that our perception of reality is far more malleable than we typically assume. Something remarkable is happening among younger generations that adds another layer to our exploration of consciousness and reality. Across social media platforms, millions of young people are engaging with a practice called reality shifting, deliberately attempting to transfer their consciousness to experience alternate realities or desired timelines. This phenomenon has generated nearly 40 million posts on TikTok alone, with practitioners sharing detailed accounts of their experiences in fictional worlds like the Harry Potter universe or the Marvel multiverse, as well as idealized versions of their own lives. While this might initially seem like elaborate daydreaming or fantasy, the practitioners describe their experiences with the same conviction and detail as those reporting Mandela effects or timeline shifts. The reality shifting community has developed sophisticated techniques for navigating between different versions of reality. The 2-cup method involves labeling containers to represent current and desired timelines, then symbolically transitioning between them by transferring and consuming water. Scripting involves writing detailed descriptions of desired realities as if already experiencing them. Quantum jumping uses guided meditation to visualize stepping into the life of an alternate version of oneself. What's particularly intriguing about this movement is how it intersects with legitimate scientific concepts, while remaining firmly in the realm of subjective experience. Practitioners often reference many worlds, interpretation of quantum mechanics, consciousness research, and theories about the nature of time to provide conceptual frameworks for their practices. Dr. Sarah Reyes, who studies generational psychology, suggests that this embrace of alternative realities serves as a coping mechanism for a generation facing unprecedented challenges. Economic uncertainty, social upheaval, and environmental concerns have created a landscape where traditional paths to success and happiness feel increasingly unattainable. In this context, the ability to imagine and experience alternate realities becomes a form of psychological resilience. Cambridge Dictionary declared manifest the word of 2024, noting growing momentum behind the concept of willing dreams into existence. This linguistic shift reflects a broader cultural movement toward believing in the malleability of reality and the power of consciousness to influence experience. While science cannot validate claims about literal reality shifting, the psychological benefits that practitioners report, reduced anxiety, increased optimism, enhanced creativity, suggest that these practices may serve important functions regardless of their metaphysical accuracy. As you consider this phenomenon, notice how it reflects something profound about human consciousness. We are meaning-making beings who actively construct our experience of reality from the raw data of sensation and memory. Whether reality shifting works in a literal sense may be less important than its capacity to expand our sense of what's possible and to provide hope during challenging times. Einstein's revolutionary insights about the nature of time provide another lens through which to examine these phenomena. His theories demonstrated that time is not the fixed universal constant that our everyday experience suggests. Time dilates and contracts based on gravity and velocity, creating a universe where simultaneity is relative and the passage of time varies depending on your reference frame. But Einstein's discoveries go even deeper. They suggest that time has what some physicists describe as a vertical dimension, multiple possibilities existing simultaneously in given moment. This isn't science fiction or metaphysical speculation. It emerges directly from our best understanding of space-time geometry and quantum mechanics. In this framework, reality resembles less a single thread moving forward through time, and more like a vast tapestry of possibilities, with consciousness somehow navigating through this field of potential outcomes. While we cannot scientifically prove that individual awareness can consciously choose between these possibilities, the mathematical structures underlying modern physics certainly allow for such speculation. Recent developments in quantum computing have added fascinating new dimensions to these discussions. When Google's quantum processor solved computational problems that would require conventional computers more time than the age of the universe, some researchers suggested this might provide evidence for parallel universe computation. The idea, while controversial and far from proven, suggests that quantum systems might literally access computational resources from alternate versions of reality. Dr. Hartmut Neven, founder of Google's quantum AI team, stated that their chip's success lends credence to the notion that quantum computation occurs in many parallel universes, in line with the idea that we live in a multiverse. While critics argue that quantum phenomena can be explained without invoking parallel realities, the debate highlights how our understanding of computation and consciousness continues to evolve. These developments in quantum technology coincide with growing interest in consciousness research and the relationship between mind and physical reality. While we must be careful not to make claims that exceed our evidence, we can appreciate how these different fields of inquiry seem to be converging toward questions about the nature of reality itself. Consider for a moment the implications of living in a universe where multiple timelines exist simultaneously. Every decision you make, every path you don't take, might create branching realities where alternate versions of events unfold. In some interpretations of quantum mechanics, every possible outcome of every quantum event generates a new universe, creating an infinite multiverse of possibilities. This remains highly speculative and is not universally accepted among physicists. However, it provides a conceptual framework that helps us think about phenomena like the Mandela Effect and reported timeline shifts in new ways. As we venture deeper into these mysteries, we encounter perhaps the most profound question of all. What role might consciousness play in shaping our experience of reality? While science cannot definitively answer this question, recent research has begun to illuminate the relationships between awareness, perception, and the construction of our subjective experience. Studies using brain imaging technology show that consciousness is far more active in creating our perception than we typically realize. Rather than passively receiving information about the world, our brains constantly predict, interpret, and reconstruct our experience based on expectations, memories, and contextual cues. This process happens largely below the threshold of awareness, creating the illusion of direct, unmediated contact with reality. Dr. Bainbridge's research on false memories reveals how this reconstructive process can lead to systematic distortions in our recollection of events. When we remember something, we're not accessing a stored recording, but rather rebuilding that memory from fragments, filling in gaps with information that seems logical or expected given the context. This understanding of memory as reconstruction rather than playback helps explain many aspects of the Mandela Effect. Our brains naturally create coherent narratives from incomplete information, and these narratives can become so compelling that they feel more real than actual recorded evidence. However, some researchers wonder whether consciousness might have properties that extend beyond what current neuroscience can measure or explain. The hard problem of consciousness, how subjective experience emerges from objective physical processes, remains one of the deepest mysteries in science. This gap in our understanding creates space for speculation about consciousness and its potential role in phenomena like the Mandela Effect. While we must approach such ideas with appropriate caution, we can remain open to the possibility that awareness and reality interact in ways we haven't yet discovered. Take a gentle breath and notice your own consciousness right now. You're aware of these words, of thoughts arising and passing away, of sensations throughout your body. This awareness itself is miraculous, a phenomenon that science can describe in terms of neural activity, but cannot fully explain in terms of subjective experience. Some interpretations of quantum mechanics suggest that consciousness might play a fundamental role in determining which possibilities become actualized. While this remains highly controversial and lacks scientific consensus, it points to deep questions about the relationship between mind and reality that continue to fascinate researchers and theorists. As our exploration draws toward a close, we find ourselves not with definitive answers, but with an expanded sense of wonder about the nature of existence itself. Whether the Mandela Effect represents false memories, glimpses of parallel universes, or something else entirely, it serves as a powerful reminder that reality is far stranger and more malleable than our everyday experience suggests. The testimonies of those who report timeline shifts, the growing phenomenon of reality shifting among younger generations, and the cutting-edge developments in quantum physics all point toward the same profound truth. Our understanding of consciousness and reality remains beautifully incomplete. This incompleteness is not a failure of science, but rather an invitation to maintain what Buddhist teachers call beginner's mind, an openness to possibilities that extends beyond current knowledge. In this spirit of open inquiry, we can appreciate both the scientific explanations for false memories and the more speculative ideas about parallel realities without needing to choose definitively between them. Perhaps the most valuable insight from our journey is the recognition that consciousness itself might be the key to understanding these phenomena. Whether we're dealing with the reconstructive nature of memory, the observer effect in quantum mechanics, or the subjective experience of reality shifts, consciousness appears to play a central role in shaping our experience of existence. As you rest in this contemplative space, exploring the effects of shifting perception, consider how profoundly our sense of reality shapes not just what we remember, but who we believe ourselves to be. The phenomenon of timeline shifting, whether literal or metaphorical, points to something deeper about the fluid nature of identity itself. When someone discovers that their cherished memory of a childhood book title was never accurate, they're not just confronting a simple mistake. They're encountering the unsettling possibility that the foundation of their personal narrative might be more malleable than they ever imagined. This malleability extends far beyond individual memories into the realm of collective consciousness. Social media platforms have become laboratories for shared reality testing, where communities gather to compare their recollections and validate experiences that feel impossible, yet undeniably real to those who share them. These digital spaces reveal something fascinating about human nature, our deep need to feel that our memories, and by extension, our identities, are shared and validated by others. Dr. Elizabeth Chen, who studies collective memory formation at Stanford University, has observed that false memories spread through social networks with patterns remarkably similar to viral content. The most compelling shared false memories often contain elements that feel more emotionally satisfying or narratively complete than the actual facts. This suggests that our brains might sometimes prioritize coherence and meaning over accuracy when reconstructing our past experiences. Take the widespread false memory of Shazam, a movie starring comedian Sinbad as a genie, which thousands of people vividly remember watching in the 1990s. No such movie exists, yet the memories are so detailed and consistent that some have created elaborate theories about alternate timelines where the film was produced and later somehow erased from our reality. The actual explanation likely involves confusion with the similar film Kazam, starring Shaquille O'Neal, combined with Sinbad's appearances in various comedy sketches involving Middle Eastern themes. Yet what strikes researchers as particularly intriguing is not the mistake itself, but the emotional intensity with which people defend these memories. The Shazam phenomenon has generated passionate online communities, detailed artwork recreating imagined movie posters, and even crowd-funded efforts to locate physical evidence of the film's existence. This level of investment suggests that these false memories serve psychological functions that extend far beyond simple information storage. Perhaps most remarkably, some individuals report that discovering their memories were false created a profound shift in their relationship with reality itself. They describe feeling as though they had awakened from a dream, or conversely, as though they had fallen into one. This existential disorientation points to how deeply our sense of self is intertwined with our confidence in our own memories and perceptions. Pause for a moment and notice how your own mind constructs this very experience of reading these words. You're not simply receiving information passively. Instead, your consciousness is actively weaving together visual patterns, linguistic meanings, conceptual associations, and emotional resonances into a seamless tapestry of understanding. This process of construction happens so smoothly that we rarely notice it, yet it represents one of the most sophisticated information processing systems in the known universe. Recent advances in neuroscience reveal that our brains operate less like recording devices and more like sophisticated prediction engines. Every fraction of a second, neural networks generate expectations about what we're likely to encounter next, based on past experience, current context, and unconscious pattern recognition. When reality matches these predictions, we experience the seamless flow of normal consciousness. When it doesn't, we feel surprise, confusion, or that subtle sense that something isn't quite right. This predictive processing model helps explain why Mandela effects often involve details that feel more logical or expected than the actual facts. Our brains naturally fill in gaps with information that creates coherent narratives, even when those narratives diverge from objective reality. The Monopoly Man's imaginary monocle makes perfect sense within our cultural understanding of wealthy Victorian gentlemen, even though the actual character was designed without one. Dr. Anil Seth, a leading consciousness researcher at the University of Sussex, describes this process using a beautiful metaphor. We don't perceive the world directly, but rather live inside a controlled hallucination generated by our brains. This hallucination is usually remarkably accurate, but it remains a construction rather than a direct window onto reality. When multiple people construct similar hallucinations about events that never occurred, we encounter phenomena like the Mandela Effect. The implications of this understanding extend far beyond psychology into philosophy and even physics. If our experience of reality is always constructed rather than directly perceived, then questions about the nature of time, causation, and even existence itself become far more complex and fascinating than they initially appear. Some interpretations of quantum mechanics suggest that reality itself might be constructed through the process of observation and measurement. While this remains highly speculative and lacks scientific consensus, it opens intriguing parallels between the way consciousness constructs personal reality and the way physical measurement might influence quantum systems. This is a speculative idea, not a proven scientific fact, but it illustrates how our understanding of mind and matter continues to evolve in unexpected directions. As you settle deeper into this exploration, allow yourself to consider the strange relationship between memory and time. We typically think of memory as a record of the past, but neuroscience reveals something far more mysterious. When you remember an event, your brain doesn't simply retrieve a stored file. Instead, it reconstructs that memory in the present moment, using neural pathways that are themselves modified by the act of remembering. This means that every time you recall a cherished memory, you're subtly altering it. Details shift, emotions change intensity, and new associations form connections with older experiences. Over time, these gradual modifications can transform memories so significantly that they bear little resemblance to the original events, yet they feel completely authentic to the person experiencing them. Dr. Karim Nader's groundbreaking research on memory reconsolidation has shown that memories are most vulnerable to change immediately after being recalled. During these moments of remembering, the neural pathways encoding those memories become temporarily malleable, allowing new information to become integrated with older recollections. This process, while normally adaptive and helpful, creates opportunities for false information to become permanently incorporated into our personal narratives. The phenomenon becomes even more complex when we consider how memories interact with our sense of personal identity over time. We are, in many ways, the stories we tell ourselves about our past experiences. When those stories change, either through normal memory evolution or through encounters with contradictory evidence, our sense of self necessarily shifts as well. This temporal fluidity of memory creates a fascinating parallel with certain interpretations of quantum mechanics and the nature of time itself. Einstein's theories revealed that simultaneity is relative and that the passage of time varies depending on reference frames. Some physicists speculate that consciousness might navigate through time in ways that are more complex than our everyday experience suggests, though this remains purely theoretical. Take a gentle breath and reflect on your own memories of childhood. How many of them do you think have remained completely unchanged over the years? How many might have been subtly modified by later experiences, conversations with family members, or even exposure to photographs and videos? This isn't a failure of memory, but rather an illustration of its dynamic, living nature. The possibility that some Mandela effects might involve collective memory reconstruction happening across large populations simultaneously adds another layer of mystery to these phenomena. While science cannot explain how this might occur, the consistency and specificity of many shared false memories continue to intrigue researchers and theorists alike. Here we encounter one of the most profound puzzles in modern science: the relationship between consciousness and physical reality at the quantum level. While we must be extremely careful not to overstate what current evidence supports, The questions raised by quantum mechanics about observation, measurement, and the nature of reality touch on mysteries that have fascinated philosophers and scientists for generations. The measurement problem in quantum mechanics concerns how and when quantum possibilities collapse into definite outcomes. Before measurement, quantum systems exist in superposition, embodying multiple potential states simultaneously. The act of measurement appears to force these systems to choose specific values, but the mechanism by which this happens remains deeply mysterious. Early interpretations suggested that conscious observation might play a role in this process, leading to speculation about whether awareness itself might influence physical reality. However, decades of research have shown that measurement and decoherence can occur through purely physical interactions without any conscious observers present. This doesn't entirely resolve the deeper questions about consciousness and reality, but it does indicate that quantum mechanics doesn't require conscious intervention to function. Dr. Sean Carroll, a theoretical physicist at Caltech, emphasizes that while consciousness remains mysterious, we shouldn't invoke quantum mechanics to explain psychological phenomena without compelling evidence. The scales at which quantum effects operate are vastly different from those relevant to neural processing and memory formation. Nevertheless, some researchers continue to explore whether quantum processes might play roles in consciousness that we don't yet understand. What remains genuinely fascinating is how the conceptual frameworks developed to understand quantum mechanics mirror some of the puzzles we encounter when studying consciousness and memory. Both involve questions about the relationships between potential and actualized states, about how information becomes integrated into coherent wholes, and about the role of time in determining what becomes real. These parallels don't prove any direct connection between quantum mechanics and phenomena like the Mandela Effect, but they do illustrate how our understanding of reality at different scales continues to reveal unexpected mysteries. As you contemplate these ideas, notice how they invite you to hold space for uncertainty while remaining open to wonder. Something remarkable is happening in human culture that adds yet another dimension to our exploration of memory, consciousness, and reality. Younger generations are developing relationships with the concept of reality that differ significantly from those of their predecessors. This shift extends far beyond individual psychology into the realm of collective meaning-making and cultural adaptation. The phenomenon of reality shifting among digital natives represents more than mere escapism or fantasy. It reflects a generation that has grown up immersed in virtual environments, augmented reality experiences, and digital communities where the boundaries between real and constructed experiences are increasingly fluid. For these individuals, the idea that consciousness might navigate between different versions of reality doesn't feel as foreign or impossible as it might to earlier generations. Dr. Sherry Turkle's research at MIT reveals how digital technology is fundamentally altering human relationships with authenticity, identity, and presence. Young people routinely maintain multiple online personas, engage with artificial intelligences as social partners, and experience meaningful relationships that exist entirely in virtual spaces. This technological immersion naturally leads to questions about what constitutes real experience and whether consciousness might have more flexibility than traditional models suggest. The linguistic shift that made manifest the word of 2024 reflects a broader cultural movement toward believing in the malleability of personal reality. This isn't necessarily about literal magical thinking, but rather about recognizing the extent to which consciousness shapes experience and the possibility that intentional awareness practices might influence outcomes in ways that science doesn't yet fully understand. Cambridge Dictionary noted that this linguistic evolution reflects growing momentum behind the concept of willing your dreams into existence. Doggies. While we must approach such ideas with appropriate scientific skepticism, the cultural significance of this shift shouldn't be dismissed. It represents a generation's response to unprecedented challenges and their creative adaptation to a rapidly changing world. These cultural developments coincide with advances in neuroscience that reveal the extent to which consciousness actively constructs, rather than passively receives, experience. Brain imaging studies show that expectation, intention, and attention all play significant roles in determining what becomes conscious experience and how memories are formed and retrieved. As you rest in this contemplative space, consider how the concept of multiple realities, whether literal or metaphorical, might offer profound therapeutic possibilities for healing trauma and expanding human potential. While we must be careful not to make medical claims, the psychological benefits that people report from engaging with these ideas deserve thoughtful consideration. Trauma therapists have long recognized that healing often involves helping clients develop new relationships with painful memories and experiences. Traditional approaches focus on processing traumatic events within a single timeline narrative, but some innovative therapists are exploring how concepts borrowed from quantum mechanics and consciousness research might provide additional frameworks for healing. Dr. Francine Shapiro's development of eye movement, desensitization, and reprocessing therapy demonstrated that traumatic memories could be reprocessed in ways that reduce their emotional intensity and psychological impact. While EMDR operates through well-understood neurological mechanisms, some practitioners wonder whether similar principles might apply to broader questions about memory, identity, and personal narrative reconstruction. The practice of reality shifting, while not scientifically validated as a therapeutic intervention, appears to provide some individuals with profound psychological benefits. Practitioners report increased creativity, reduced anxiety about current circumstances, and enhanced ability to envision positive futures. These outcomes might result from the practice's emphasis on detailed visualization, emotional regulation, and belief in personal agency rather than any literal movement between realities. Veterans with PTSD have sometimes found relief through therapeutic approaches that involve reimagining traumatic events with different outcomes or exploring alternate versions of their personal narratives. While these techniques don't change historical facts, they can help individuals develop more flexible relationships with their memories and identities. The concept of a timeline shifting, whether understood literally or metaphorically, offers a powerful framework for recognizing that personal identity and life trajectory are more malleable than we often assume. This recognition can be profoundly liberating for individuals who feel trapped by past mistakes, traumatic experiences, or limiting beliefs about their capabilities. Take a moment to breathe deeply and consider your own relationship with your personal history. How might your life feel different if you truly believed that your future wasn't determined by your past? What possibilities might open if you could hold your memories more lightly while remaining grounded in present moment awareness? Research into collective consciousness phenomena reveals fascinating patterns that extend our understanding of how individual minds might interact in ways that transcend normal communication channels. While we must approach these ideas with appropriate scientific caution, the evidence for some forms of non-local correlation between human consciousness continues to accumulate in controlled laboratory settings. The Global Consciousness Project, led by Dr. Roger Nelson at Princeton University, has collected data from a worldwide network of random number generators for over 2 decades. The project explores whether human consciousness might influence physical systems during periods of collective attention or emotional intensity. While the statistical effects are subtle and the interpretation remains controversial, the data suggests correlations between global events and deviations from randomness that exceed chance probability. Dr. Dean Radin's research at the Institute of Noetic Sciences has documented similar correlations between meditation practices and random number generator outputs. These studies, while not proving direct causal relationships, suggest that consciousness and physical systems might interact in ways that current scientific models don't fully explain. This remains a speculative area of research with no scientific consensus, but it illustrates how our understanding of mind-matter relationships continues to evolve. The phenomenon of morphic resonance, proposed by biologist Dr. Rupert Sheldrake, suggests that patterns of activity in one system might influence similar patterns in other systems across space and time. While this hypothesis remains highly controversial and lacks acceptance within mainstream science, it provides a conceptual framework that some researchers find useful for understanding apparent non-local correlations in consciousness research. These investigations into collective consciousness phenomena offer potential insights into how Mandela effects might spread through populations. If consciousness does have non-local properties that science doesn't yet understand, it's possible that false memories could propagate through subtle information, sharing mechanisms that operate below the threshold of normal awareness. The Japanese research on water crystal formation, conducted by Dr. Masaru Emoto, while methodologically problematic and not accepted by mainstream science, captured public imagination precisely because it suggested that human intention might influence physical systems in measurable ways. While the specific claims remain unproven, the underlying questions about consciousness and physical reality continue to inspire legitimate scientific investigation. As we venture deeper into these mysteries, we encounter fundamental philosophical questions about the nature of truth, reality, and human knowledge itself. The Mandela Effect forces us to confront uncomfortable questions about the reliability of our most basic cognitive faculties and the foundations upon which we build our understanding of the world. René Descartes famously declared, "I think, therefore I am," establishing individual consciousness as the one indubitable foundation for knowledge. But the phenomenon of collective false memories suggests a different starting point. We remember, therefore we were, even when those memories correspond to events that never occurred. This creates a philosophical paradox that challenges both individual and collective epistemology. The ancient Greek philosopher Plato's allegory of the cave provides a powerful framework for understanding how shared illusions might shape collective reality. In Plato's story, prisoners chained in a cave mistake shadows on the wall for reality itself, never suspecting that their entire worldview is based on incomplete and distorted information. The Mandela Effect might represent a modern version of this predicament, where entire populations share convincing illusions about the nature of their shared reality. Buddhist philosophy offers another lens through which to understand these phenomena. The concept of Maya, or the illusory nature of perceived reality, suggests that all experience is fundamentally constructed rather than directly apprehended. From this perspective, false memories and accurate memories are equally illusory, both representing mental constructions that obscure the deeper nature of consciousness itself. Western phenomenology, particularly the work of Maurice Merleau-Ponty, emphasizes the embodied nature of consciousness and the way our physical presence in the world shapes our perception of reality. This tradition suggests that memory and perception are always filtered through our bodily experience and cultural conditioning, making objective truth perhaps impossible to achieve directly. The philosophical implications extend into questions about personal identity and continuity over time. If our memories are unreliable and subject to constant reconstruction, what constitutes the self that persists through changing experiences? The Mandela Effect highlights how fragile the foundations of personal identity might be when stripped of the assumption that our memories accurately reflect our past experiences. Take a gentle breath and reflect on how these philosophical questions might apply to your own experience. What would it mean for your sense of self if you discovered that many of your cherished memories were inaccurate? How might this recognition change your relationship with certainty and doubt in other areas of life? Emerging technologies are beginning to blur the boundaries between memory, imagination, and experienced reality in ways that will likely make phenomena like the Mandela Effect both more common and more complex. Virtual and augmented reality systems are creating immersive experiences that feel increasingly indistinguishable from natural perception, while artificial intelligence systems are becoming sophisticated enough to generate convincing false memories and manipulated media. Dr. Mary Aiken's research on cyberpsychology reveals how digital environments are already altering human memory formation and retrieval processes. People who spend significant time in virtual environments often struggle to distinguish between experiences that occurred in physical versus digital spaces. This technological memory confusion provides a controlled laboratory for understanding how false memories might form and spread through populations. Brain-computer interface technology is approaching the point where direct neural stimulation might be able to create artificial memories that feel completely authentic to the person experiencing them. While such capabilities remain largely theoretical, they raise profound ethical questions about the nature of authentic experience and the potential for intentional memory manipulation. The development of quantum computing systems that can solve problems requiring access to computational resources exceeding our entire universe's classical capacity has led some researchers to speculate about whether these systems might provide evidence for parallel universe computation. While this interpretation remains highly controversial, it illustrates how technological advancement continues to raise questions about the nature of reality itself. Social media platforms are evolving into increasingly sophisticated reality construction systems where artificial intelligence algorithms shape what information individuals encounter, potentially creating custom-tailored versions of reality for different users. These filter bubbles might represent technological versions of parallel universe experiences, where people inhabit information environments so different that they effectively live in separate realities. Deepfake technology and synthetic media generation are making it increasingly difficult to distinguish authentic from artificially created content. As these tools become more sophisticated and accessible, The challenge of determining what actually occurred versus what appears to have occurred will become increasingly complex for individuals and societies alike. As our exploration draws toward its close, we find ourselves not with definitive answers, but with an expanded capacity for wonder and uncertainty. The mysteries we've encountered, from collective false memories to quantum consciousness, from timeline-shifting experiences to the malleable nature of personal identity, all point toward the same profound recognition. Reality is far stranger, more complex, and more beautiful than our everyday assumptions suggest. The Mandela Effect serves as a portal into these deeper mysteries precisely because it's so relatable and immediate. Most people can identify memories that don't match current evidence, creating an experiential entry point into questions about consciousness, time, and the nature of existence itself. Whether these phenomena represent false memories, glimpses of parallel realities, or something else entirely may be less important than their capacity to awaken wonder and expand our sense of what might be possible. The testimonies of those who report timeline shifts, the growing phenomenon of reality shifting among younger generations, the cutting-edge developments in quantum computing, and the philosophical implications of constructed reality all converge toward the same invitation: to hold our beliefs about the nature of existence more lightly, while remaining open to mystery and possibility. This doesn't mean abandoning critical thinking or scientific rigor. Rather, it suggests cultivating what Zen teachers call don't know mind, a state of open awareness that can hold both skepticism and wonder simultaneously. In this state, we can appreciate the scientific explanations for false memories while remaining curious about the aspects of these phenomena that current theories don't fully address. The relationship between consciousness and reality remains one of the deepest mysteries in science and philosophy. Whether individual awareness plays any role in shaping physical reality through quantum mechanical processes remains highly speculative and lacks scientific consensus. However, the questions raised by this possibility continue to inspire legitimate research and philosophical inquiry. As you settle deeper into this contemplation, imagine walking through your own mind as if it were a vast library. But this isn't an ordinary library where books sit unchanged on their shelves. Instead, every time you pull a memory from its place and examine it, the act of reading somehow alters the text itself. Words shift, chapters rearrange themselves, and entire storylines evolve with each revisiting. This metaphor captures something profound that neuroscientists have discovered about human memory in recent decades. Our brains don't simply store experiences like files on a computer hard drive. Instead, they operate more like skilled editors, constantly revising and updating our personal narratives each time we access them. Every act of remembering is simultaneously an act of rewriting. Dr. Lynn Nadel's groundbreaking research at the University of Arizona has revealed that memories exist in a state of perpetual reconstruction. When you recall your first day of school or your grandmother's kitchen, your brain doesn't retrieve a pristine recording of those experiences. Instead, it actively rebuilds those memories using current knowledge, emotions, and expectations to fill in details that may have faded or never existed in the first place. This process becomes particularly fascinating when we consider how it might contribute to collective phenomena like the Mandela Effect. If individual memories are constantly being reconstructed, what happens when thousands of people reconstruct similar false details about the same events? The result might be something like a collective editing process, where shared cultural expectations and assumptions gradually reshape our communal understanding of the past. Consider how this editing process might work in practice. When someone recalls the Monopoly man, their brain doesn't simply access a stored image. Instead, it reconstructs that image using cultural associations about wealthy Victorian gentlemen, expectations about how such characters should appear, and fragments of visual memory from related sources. The monocle appears not because it was ever actually there, but because it feels like it should have been there based on everything else we know about similar characters. This reconstruction process happens so smoothly and automatically that we rarely notice it occurring. We experience the results as a clear, confident memory that feels as reliable as any direct perception. Only when confronted with contrary evidence do we begin to glimpse the extraordinary complexity of the memory editing process that occurs beneath our awareness. Take a gentle breath and reflect on your own memories from yesterday. How many details do you think you're filling in from expectation rather than actual recollection? How many aspects of that experience might be subtly different each time you remember them? This isn't a failure of your cognitive system, but rather evidence of its remarkable adaptability and creativity. Here we encounter one of the most intriguing intersections between consciousness research and modern physics, though we must tread carefully to avoid overstepping what current evidence actually supports. Some interpretations of quantum mechanics suggest fascinating parallels with the reconstructive nature of memory and perception, though these connections remain speculative and lack scientific consensus. The principle of quantum superposition demonstrates that particles can exist in multiple states simultaneously until the moment of measurement forces them into definite configurations. This remains a proven scientific fact, observed countless times in laboratory settings. What remains controversial is whether similar principles might apply to larger-scale systems, including the complex neural networks that generate consciousness. Dr. Roger Penrose and Dr. Stuart Hameroff have proposed that quantum processes might play a role in consciousness through microtubules within neurons. Their orchestrated objective reduction theory suggests that consciousness might emerge from quantum computations occurring at the cellular level. While this hypothesis remains highly controversial and lacks widespread acceptance among neuroscientists, it illustrates how researchers continue to explore potential quantum aspects of consciousness. This remains a speculative idea, not a proven scientific fact. However, the conceptual parallels between quantum superposition and memory reconstruction offer intriguing food for thought. Just as quantum particles exist in multiple potential states before measurement, our memories might exist in multiple potential versions before the act of remembering forces them into specific configurations. The observer effect in quantum mechanics demonstrates that the act of measurement can influence the behavior of quantum systems. While this doesn't mean that human consciousness directly controls quantum events, it does raise profound questions about the relationship between observation and reality at the most fundamental levels of physics. Some interpretations suggest, metaphorically speaking, that consciousness might operate according to principles that echo quantum mechanical processes. The act of remembering might be similar to quantum measurement, collapsing multiple potential memory states into a single experienced version. This remains purely theoretical and should not be taken as a literal description of how memory works. As you contemplate these ideas, notice how they invite you to question the solidity of your own experience. If memories are reconstructed each time you access them, and if consciousness itself might operate according to principles that transcend classical physics. What does this mean for your understanding of personal identity and the nature of self? The phenomenon of shared false memories takes on new dimensions when we consider how digital technology might be creating unprecedented forms of collective consciousness. Social media platforms, search algorithms, and viral content distribution systems are generating shared information environments that might influence memory formation in ways that previous generations never experienced. Dr. Zeynep Tufekci's research on algorithmic amplification reveals how digital platforms can create echo chambers where false information spreads more rapidly and convincingly than accurate information. When millions of people encounter the same misleading content through social media algorithms, it creates fertile ground for the formation of shared false memories about current events and historical facts. The speed and scale of digital information sharing might be accelerating the formation of collective false memories in unprecedented ways. A single viral post containing inaccurate information about a historical event or cultural reference can reach millions of people within hours, potentially creating the foundation for new Mandela effects to emerge and solidify within digital communities. This process becomes even more complex when we consider how artificial intelligence systems are beginning to generate synthetic content that feels increasingly authentic. Deepfake technology, AI-generated images, and sophisticated text generation systems are creating convincing false evidence that might support and reinforce emerging false memories within online communities. The phenomenon of digital déjà vu is becoming increasingly common among heavy internet users who encounter information that feels familiar but can't be traced to any specific source. This might represent a new form of false memory formation, where fragmented digital experiences combine to create false recollections of events that never occurred or content that was never encountered. As you navigate your own digital information environment, take a moment to notice how algorithm-curated content shapes your perception of what's common, normal, or widely believed. How might your social media feeds be influencing not just your current opinions, but your memories of past events and cultural references? The implications extend beyond individual psychology into questions about collective reality itself. If large populations are increasingly living within customized information bubbles created by algorithmic systems, we might be witnessing the emergence of multiple parallel versions of shared reality that have little overlap with each other. Within the contemplative space we're sharing, consider how the recognition that memory and reality are more malleable than we typically assume might offer profound opportunities for healing and personal transformation. This doesn't mean that we can simply think our way into different circumstances, but rather that our relationship with our personal narratives might be more flexible than we often realize. Trauma-informed therapy has long recognized that healing often involves helping individuals develop new relationships with painful memories and experiences. Traditional approaches focus on processing traumatic events within established narrative frameworks, but some innovative practitioners are exploring how concepts of narrative flexibility and identity reconstruction might expand therapeutic possibilities. The practice of narrative therapy, developed by Michael White and David Epstein, operates on the premise that people are not their problems, but rather that problems exist within stories that can be examined, questioned, and potentially rewritten. This approach recognizes that personal identity is constructed through ongoing storytelling processes that remain open to revision and reconstruction. Some individuals report that engaging with ideas about parallel realities and timeline flexibility, whether understood literally or metaphorically, provides them with increased sense of agency and possibility in their personal healing journeys. These approaches should not be considered substitutes for professional mental health treatment, but they illustrate how expanded concepts of reality might complement traditional therapeutic approaches. The Japanese practice of forest bathing, or Shinrin-yoku, offers another example of how alternative frameworks for understanding reality might support healing and well-being. Practitioners report that immersing themselves in natural environments while maintaining open, receptive awareness creates profound shifts in their relationship with stress, anxiety, and personal challenges. While these experiences cannot be scientifically validated as evidence for literal reality shifting, they demonstrate how changes in perspective and consciousness can create measurable improvements in psychological and physiological well-being. The healing power might lie not in the literal truth of alternative reality concepts, but in their capacity to expand our sense of what's possible. Take a deep breath and consider your own relationship with the stories you tell about your past, present, and future possibilities. How might your life experience shift if you held those narratives more lightly while remaining grounded in present moment awareness and practical wisdom? Recent discoveries in neuroscience reveal that our brains remain far more changeable throughout life than was previously understood. This neuroplasticity extends beyond simple learning into the realm of fundamental perception and memory reconstruction, suggesting that consciousness itself might be more malleable than traditional models propose. Dr. Michael Merzenich pioneering research demonstrates that focused attention and intentional practice can literally rewire neural networks at any age. This means that the patterns of thought, perception, and memory that feel most fixed and unchangeable are actually dynamic systems that respond to conscious influence and environmental changes. The phenomenon of perceptual learning shows how sustained attention to previously unnoticed aspects of experience can enhance our ability to detect subtle patterns and differences. Musicians develop enhanced auditory discrimination, visual artists become more sensitive to colour and form, and meditation practitioners often report increased awareness of previously unconscious mental processes. This neuroplasticity research provides a scientific foundation for understanding how practices like meditation, visualization, and intentional attention training might influence not just our interpretation of experience, but our actual perceptual capabilities. While this doesn't prove that consciousness can directly manipulate external reality, it does suggest that the boundary between subjective experience and objective perception is more fluid than commonly assumed. The default mode network, a set of brain regions that becomes active during rest and introspection, appears to play crucial roles in constructing our sense of personal identity and temporal continuity. Research shows that meditation practices can significantly alter the activity patterns within this network, potentially changing how practitioners experience their relationship with time, memory, and self-identity. Some advanced meditation practitioners report experiencing states of consciousness where the normal boundaries between past, present, and future become fluid or dissolve entirely. While these experiences cannot be objectively verified, brain imaging studies confirm that such practices create measurable changes in neural networks associated with temporal processing and self-referential thinking. These findings don't prove that consciousness can literally move between parallel timelines, but they do suggest that our subjective experience of time and identity is far more malleable than everyday awareness typically reveals. This neuroplasticity of temporal perception might help explain why some individuals report experiences that feel like timeline shifts or reality changes. As you rest in this contemplative exploration, notice how many of the phenomena we've discussed echo insights that contemplative traditions have explored for thousands of years. The malleability of memory, the constructed nature of personal identity, and the fluid relationship between consciousness and reality are themes that appear consistently across diverse wisdom traditions, though expressed in different language and cultural contexts. Buddhist psychology describes the concept of no self, suggesting that what we typically consider to be our fixed personal identity is actually a constantly changing process rather than a stable entity. This teaching parallels modern neuroscience discoveries about the reconstructive nature of memory and the dynamic processes that create our sense of continuous selfhood. The Hindu concept of Maya, often translated as illusion, points toward the idea that our ordinary perception of reality represents only a partial and potentially misleading view of deeper truths. This ancient insight resonates with contemporary discoveries about how consciousness actively constructs rather than passively receives our experience of the world. Taoist philosophy emphasizes the fluid, ever-changing nature of existence and the importance of remaining flexible and responsive to the natural flow of circumstances. This perspective offers a framework for understanding phenomena like the Mandela Effect, not as problems to be solved, but as reminders of the fundamental impermanence and malleability that characterize all experience. Indigenous wisdom traditions from various cultures often include sophisticated understandings of multiple realities, shamanic journeying, and the use of consciousness to navigate between different states and dimensions of existence. While these traditions operate within very different conceptual frameworks than modern physics, they share a recognition that ordinary waking consciousness represents only one possible mode of awareness. The convergence of ancient contemplative insights with cutting-edge scientific discoveries suggests that we might be approaching a more integrated understanding of consciousness and reality that honors both rigorous empirical investigation and the profound insights available through direct contemplative exploration. These parallels don't prove the literal truth of any particular metaphysical claims, but they do suggest that the questions raised by phenomena like the Mandela Effect touch on perennial human concerns about the nature of mind, reality, and our place within the larger cosmos. Within this quiet space of reflection, we must also consider the ethical implications of how we understand and share ideas about the malleable nature of reality and consciousness. While these concepts can be profoundly liberating and healing for many individuals, they also carry potential risks when taken to extremes or applied without wisdom and discernment. The recognition that memory is reconstructive and that personal narratives can be rewritten should not be used to dismiss or minimize the reality of trauma, injustice, or systemic oppression. Historical facts remain important regardless of how individual or collective memory might distort them over time. The Mandela Effect reveals limitations in human memory, not the absence of objective historical truth. Similarly, while practices like reality shifting and timeline visualization might provide psychological benefits for some individuals, they should not be promoted as substitutes for addressing real-world challenges through practical action and professional support when needed. The balance between embracing possibility and maintaining grounded wisdom requires careful consideration. Dr. Rachel Yehuda's research on epigenetic trauma transmission reveals how historical traumas can influence genetic generations, expression across, creating biological impacts that extend far beyond individual memory or perception. This research reminds us that while consciousness and memory are malleable, the effects of real events create lasting consequences that cannot be simply thought or visualized away. The growing interest in consciousness-based approaches to healing and transformation must be balanced with respect for evidence-based therapeutic approaches and medical treatment when appropriate. Ideas about parallel realities and timeline shifting should complement rather than replace professional mental health care, medical treatment, and practical problem-solving strategies. The democratization of these ideas through social media and popular culture creates both opportunities and risks. While expanded concepts of possibility can inspire hope and creativity, they can also contribute to magical thinking, avoidance of necessary critical thinking, and disengagement from real-world challenges when taken to extremes. As you contemplate these ideas in your own life, consider how you might hold them with both openness and discernment. How can you remain curious about expanded possibilities while maintaining practical wisdom and ethical responsibility in your relationships and community engagement? Your daily life provides countless opportunities to observe the phenomena we've been exploring in gentle, non-intrusive ways that can deepen your understanding without requiring any particular beliefs or practices. Simply paying attention to your own experience with curious awareness can reveal the dynamic, constructed nature of perception and memory. Notice how your mood influences your recollection of recent events. On days when you feel optimistic, you might remember conversations more positively than on days when you feel stressed or tired. This isn't dishonesty or self-deception, but rather evidence of how your current state of consciousness actively participates in memory reconstruction. Pay attention to how expectations shape your perception of familiar environments. When you enter a room you've been in many times before, notice which details you actually observe versus which ones your brain fills in from memory and expectation. You might be surprised to discover how much of your experience is constructed rather than directly perceived. Observe how social interactions influence your confidence in your own memories. When friends or family members remember shared events differently than you do, notice your internal response. Do you immediately defer to their version, defend your own recollection, or find yourself uncertain about details you previously felt confident about? Experiment with gentle attention practices that don't require any special beliefs or techniques. Simply spend a few minutes each day observing your breath, the sensations in your body, or the sounds in your environment without trying to change anything. Notice how this quality of open awareness affects your relationship with your thoughts and perceptions. These everyday observations can provide direct insight into the malleable nature of consciousness without requiring you to adopt any particular worldview or engage in complex practices. The laboratory of your own experience contains all the evidence you need to appreciate the mysterious and creative nature of awareness itself. The key is to approach these observations with curiosity rather than judgment, wonder rather than analysis, and openness rather than the need to reach particular conclusions. The mystery itself is more valuable than any specific answers you might discover along the way. As our exploration draws toward its close, imagine consciousness itself as an infinite library containing not just every book that has ever been written, but every book that could ever be written. In this vast repository of possibility, your personal awareness functions like a gentle librarian, selecting which stories to bring into your immediate experience, while countless others remain in potential, waiting quietly on their shelves. The Mandela Effect might represent moments when this cosmic librarian accidentally pulls a volume from a slightly different section, bringing you memories from stories that feel completely familiar, yet don't quite match the official records of this particular reality. Whether this happens due to simple cataloguing errors in your personal memory system, or something more mysterious about the nature of consciousness, itself remains beautifully uncertain. This metaphor invites us to hold both scientific understanding and open wonder simultaneously. The rigorous research on memory reconstruction and the fascinating discoveries about neuroplasticity provide valuable insights into how these phenomena might arise through purely biological processes. Yet the consistency and emotional intensity of many Mandela effects continue to inspire questions that current scientific models don't fully address. The growing cultural phenomenon of reality shifting among younger generations represents another way of engaging with this infinite library of possibility. Whether understood literally or metaphorically, these practices seem to provide participants with expanded sense of agency, creativity, and hope. The psychological benefits they report might be more important than the metaphysical accuracy of their explanations. Recent developments in quantum computing that suggest computational processes might access resources from parallel universes add another layer of scientific mystery to these discussions. While such interpretations remain highly speculative and lack scientific consensus, they illustrate how our understanding of computation, consciousness, and reality continues to evolve in unexpected directions. The convergence of ancient wisdom traditions, cutting-edge neuroscience, quantum mechanics research, and emerging digital technologies creates a uniquely rich context for exploring questions about consciousness and reality. We live in a time when the boundaries between science and spirituality, technology and contemplative practice, individual and collective consciousness are becoming increasingly fluid and interpenetrating. In this final reflection, we return to where we began, with wonder at the mysterious nature of consciousness and its relationship to the reality we share. The journey through collective false memories, parallel universe theories, quantum mechanics interpretations, and the malleable nature of personal identity has brought us full circle to the recognition that existence itself remains beautifully, mysteriously uncertain. The Mandela Effect serves as a gentle teacher, reminding us that even our most basic cognitive functions operate in ways that exceed our everyday understanding. Whether these phenomena represent simple memory errors, glimpses of parallel realities, or something else entirely, may be less important than their capacity to awaken humility, wonder, and openness to possibilities that transcend our current knowledge. The testimonies of those who report timeline shifts, the scientific research on memory reconstruction, the philosophical implications of consciousness and identity, and the cultural evolution of reality concepts all point toward the same fundamental recognition. We are far more mysterious to ourselves than we typically acknowledge. This mystery is not a problem to be solved, but a gift to be appreciated. It keeps life interesting, maintains space for growth and discovery, and prevents us from becoming too attached to limited definitions of what's possible. The moment we think we have consciousness, memory, or reality completely figured out is precisely the moment we've stopped paying attention to their actual complexity and beauty. Imagine discovering that the memories you'll form tomorrow already exist somewhere in the quantum foam of space-time, waiting patiently for your consciousness to encounter them. This isn't science fiction, but rather a natural consequence of how some physicists interpret the relationship between time, information, and the observer effect in quantum mechanics. As you rest in this moment, consider the possibility that every memory you've ever formed might be simultaneously creating ripple effects backward and forward through time itself. The phenomenon we've been exploring throughout this journey, the strange world of collective false memories and timeline-shifting experiences, takes on even deeper significance when we consider how cutting-edge research in quantum information theory is beginning to suggest that information itself might be more fundamental to reality than matter or energy. This remains a speculative area of research with no scientific consensus, yet the implications are profound enough to capture the attention of leading physicists worldwide. Dr. John Wheeler's famous thought experiment about delayed choice quantum eraser demonstrates that decisions made in the present can retroactively determine what happened in the past at the quantum level. While this doesn't mean that human consciousness can literally rewrite history, it does reveal that the relationships between past, present, and future at the most fundamental levels of physics is far more mysterious than our everyday experience suggests. Take a gentle breath and allow yourself to wonder. If information can flow backward through time at the quantum scale, what might this mean for the formation of memories, the construction of personal identity, and the shared realities we create together? These questions invite us not toward definitive answers, but toward a deeper appreciation of the mystery that surrounds us constantly. Within this contemplative space, consider how your brain might be constantly receiving information from future versions of yourself, creating a kind of temporal feedback loop that influences your present moment decisions and memory formation. This isn't a proven scientific fact, but rather a speculative exploration of what some interpretations of quantum mechanics might suggest about the nature of consciousness and time. Recent research in quantum biology has revealed that living systems, from photosynthesis in plants to navigation in migratory birds, utilize quantum effects in ways that classical physics cannot explain. While the scale differences between quantum processes and neural activity remain vast, some researchers wonder whether consciousness itself might represent a quantum biological phenomenon that operates according to principles we're only beginning to understand. Dr. Matthew Fisher's theoretical work at UC Santa Barbara explores how quantum entanglement might be preserved within the warm, noisy environment of living neurons through specialized molecular structures. While this research remains highly speculative and lacks experimental confirmation, it illustrates how our understanding of the relationships between quantum mechanics and biological systems continues to evolve in surprising directions. The implications extend beyond individual consciousness into questions about collective memory and shared reality construction. If consciousness does operate according to quantum principles, it's possible that the false memories characteristic of the Mandela Effect might represent quantum superposition states, where multiple versions of events exist simultaneously until the act of collective observation forces them into definite configurations. This remains a highly speculative idea with no scientific support, yet it provides a fascinating framework for understanding how individual minds might be connected in ways that transcend normal communication channels. Some interpretations suggest that consciousness itself might exist in a kind of quantum field that allows for non-local correlations between different observers. As you contemplate these possibilities, notice how they challenge your assumptions about the independence and isolation of individual consciousness. What might it mean for your sense of personal identity if your awareness is actually part of a larger, interconnected quantum system that extends across space and time? Here we encounter what might be the most profound implication of our entire exploration: the possibility that consciousness doesn't simply observe reality, but actively participates in its ongoing creation. This doesn't mean that individual thoughts directly control external events, but rather that awareness itself might be one of the fundamental forces that shapes how quantum possibilities become actualized experiences. The delayed choice quantum eraser experiments reveal that the act of measurement can retroactively determine what happened in quantum systems, even after the events have seemingly already occurred. While this phenomenon is limited to quantum scales and doesn't directly apply to large-scale reality, it does suggest that the relationship between observation and reality is more complex than classical physics assumed. Some interpretations of these findings, though highly speculative and lacking scientific consensus, suggest that consciousness might play a role in determining which possibilities from the quantum realm become manifested in our shared experience. This would mean that the collective false memories of the Mandela Effect might represent moments when different groups of observers have actualized slightly different versions of the same events. The concept of quantum decoherence helps explain how quantum superposition states transition into classical, definite outcomes through interaction with environmental systems. Some researchers wonder whether collective human observation might represent a form of environmental interaction that influences this decoherence process, though this remains purely theoretical speculation. Dr. Henry Stapp's interpretation of quantum mechanics suggests that conscious observation plays a fundamental role in the collapse of quantum wave functions. While this view is not widely accepted among physicists, it illustrates how questions about consciousness and measurement continue to generate debate within the scientific community. Take a moment to breathe deeply and consider your own role as an observer in this moment. As you read these words, your consciousness is actively constructing your experience from patterns of light, linguistic meanings, and conceptual associations. This construction process happens so seamlessly that we rarely notice it, yet it represents one of the most sophisticated information processing systems in the known universe. The phenomenon of global consciousness, while not scientifically proven, provides another lens through which to examine how individual awareness might participate in collective reality construction. During moments of shared attention or emotional intensity, such as major world events, some research suggests that subtle correlations appear in otherwise random physical systems worldwide. The Global Consciousness Project has documented statistical anomalies in random number generators during events like the September 11th attacks, the Indian Ocean tsunami, and other moments of collective focus. While these correlations are subtle and their interpretation remains controversial, they suggest that human consciousness might interact with physical systems in ways that current scientific models don't fully explain. This research remains preliminary and lacks scientific consensus, but it raises intriguing questions about whether collective attention might influence the physical world through mechanisms we don't yet understand. If consciousness does have non-local properties, it's possible that phenomena like the Mandela Effect represent instances where collective awareness has somehow influenced the actualization of different versions of events. Dr. Roger Nelson's analysis of the Global Consciousness Project data reveals patterns that seem to precede major world events by several hours, suggesting that collective consciousness might sometimes detect significant changes before they occur in ordinary space-time. This remains highly speculative and should not be taken as proven scientific fact, but it illustrates how our understanding of consciousness and time continues to evolve. The concept of morphic resonance, proposed by Dr. Rupert Sheldrake, suggests that patterns of activity in one system might influence similar patterns in other systems across space and time. While this hypothesis remains controversial and lacks acceptance within mainstream science, it provides a conceptual framework that some researchers find useful for understanding apparent correlations in consciousness research. These investigations into collective consciousness phenomena don't prove that groups of people can literally alter reality through shared intention, but they do suggest that individual awareness might be more interconnected than our everyday experience typically reveals. The boundaries between self and other, between mind and world, might be far more fluid than classical models suggest. Within this gentle exploration, we encounter something beautiful about the human response to mystery and uncertainty. Rather than feeling threatened by the recognition that reality might be more malleable than we assumed, many people report feeling liberated, curious, and more open to possibilities they hadn't previously considered. The practice of holding space for uncertainty while remaining grounded in present moment awareness represents a sophisticated form of emotional regulation that can enhance both individual well-being and collective wisdom. This doesn't require believing in any particular theory about parallel universes or quantum consciousness, but simply maintaining openness to possibilities that exceed current understanding. Research on post-traumatic growth reveals that individuals who have faced significant challenges often develop enhanced appreciation for mystery, increased tolerance for ambiguity, and deeper connections with others who share similar experiences. The disorientation that accompanies encounters with the Mandela Effect might trigger similar growth processes, expanding people's capacity for wonder and connection. Dr. Kristin Neff's research on self-compassion demonstrates that individuals who can hold their own experiences with kindness and curiosity, rather than judgment and certainty, tend to show greater resilience, creativity, and emotional well-being. This quality of gentle awareness might be particularly valuable when encountering phenomena that challenge our assumptions about memory and reality. The recognition that consciousness actively constructs rather than passively receives experience can be profoundly empowering when understood skillfully. While we cannot simply think our way into different external circumstances, we can develop more flexible relationships with our internal narratives, emotional reactions, and sense of what might be possible in our lives. Some meditation practitioners report that sustained contemplative practice naturally leads to increased appreciation for the constructed nature of personal identity and the fluid relationship between awareness and experience. These insights often bring relief from excessive worry about the past and future, along with enhanced presence and responsiveness to current circumstances. As you rest in this moment, notice how your awareness is already demonstrating these qualities of construction and flexibility. Your consciousness is seamlessly weaving together sensory impressions, conceptual understanding, emotional responses, and memory associations to create this unique experience of reading and reflecting. This process is happening right now, in real time, as a natural expression of your awareness. Imagine consciousness as a vast garden where every thought, memory, and possibility exists as a seed containing infinite potential for growth and transformation. In this garden, the seeds that receive the most attention and care from your awareness are the ones that flourish and shape your experienced reality, while countless others remain in dormant potential, waiting for the right conditions to sprout. This metaphor captures something essential about how both individual psychology and quantum mechanics seem to operate. At the personal level, the aspects of your life that receive focused attention and emotional investment tend to become more prominent and influential in your ongoing experience. At the quantum level, the measurement processes that receive experimental attention determine which potential states become actualized outcomes, and quantum measurement remains metaphorical rather than literal. It points toward deeper questions about the role of observation. The parallel between psychological attention oracle rather than literal, yet deep questions about the role of observation in shaping experience at multiple scales of reality. Some interpretations suggest that consciousness and quantum measurement might share or only beginning to recognize underlying principles that we. Dr. William James, often considered the father of American psychology, wrote extensively about the selective nature of attention and its role in constructing personal reality. His insights from over a century ago continue to resonate with contemporary research on consciousness, neuroplasticity, and the relationship between awareness and experience. The practice of mindful attention, whether applied to breath awareness, body sensations, or present moment experience, demonstrates how conscious intention can influence neural development, emotional regulation, and even gene expression. While these effects operate through well-understood biological mechanisms rather than quantum processes, they illustrate the profound capacity of awareness to shape experience. Recent research on meditation and neuroplasticity reveals that sustained contemplative practice can literally rewire brain networks associated with attention, emotional regulation, and self-awareness. These changes create measurable improvements in well-being, creativity, and social connection that extend far beyond the meditation session itself. Take a gentle breath and notice how your attention is shaping this very moment. By choosing to focus on these words and ideas, you're actively participating in the construction of your current experience while simultaneously influencing the neural pathways that will affect your future perceptions and possibilities. The phenomenon of self-awareness represents one of the deepest mysteries in science and philosophy. How does a physical system become aware of its own existence? How does matter organize itself in such a way that it can contemplate its own nature? These questions touch on the same deep mysteries that we've encountered throughout our journey into the Mandela Effect and parallel universe theories. Some interpretations of quantum mechanics suggest that self-reference and observation play fundamental roles in determining how reality unfolds. The measurement problem in quantum physics asks essentially the same question that consciousness research faces. How does potential become actual? And what role does observation play in this process? Dr. Douglas Hofstadter's exploration of self-reference in his book, Gödel, Escher, Bach, reveals how recursive patterns appear throughout mathematics, art, music, and consciousness itself. These patterns suggest that self-reference might be a fundamental feature of complex systems rather than an accidental byproduct of neural activity. The strange loop of consciousness observing itself creates the possibility for for metacognition, the awareness of awareness itself. This capacity for reflective consciousness allows humans to examine their own mental processes, question their assumptions, and potentially transcend the limitations of their current understanding. As you read these words, notice the multi-layered nature of your current experience. There's the awareness of the words themselves, the understanding of their meanings, the emotional responses they evoke, and the meta-awareness that recognizes all of these processes occurring simultaneously. This recursive depth of consciousness remains one of the most remarkable features of human experience. The recognition that consciousness is both the observer and the observed, both the questioner and the questioned, brings us full circle to the mysteries we've been exploring throughout this journey. Whether dealing with false memories, parallel universes, or the quantum nature of reality, we consistently encounter the puzzle of how awareness relates to the phenomena it investigates. In this final contemplation, we rest in the recognition that every moment contains infinite possibilities for how consciousness might unfold and evolve. The Mandela Effects, timeline-shifting experiences, and quantum mechanical mysteries we've explored all point toward the same profound truth. Reality is far more open, creative, and participatory than our ordinary thinking typically acknowledges. The false memories that characterize the Mandela Effect might represent glimpses of the vast field of possibilities that consciousness navigates continuously. Whether these represent simple cognitive errors, quantum superposition effects, or something else entirely, may be less important than what they reveal about the creative, reconstructive nature of awareness itself. Your personal journey of growth, healing, and awakening participates in the same creative process. Each moment offers opportunities to choose which possibilities receive your attention and intention, which aspects of your experience you cultivate and develop, and which stories you tell yourself about who you are and what might be possible in your life. The scientific research on neuroplasticity, the philosophical insights about the constructed nature of identity, and the speculative theories about quantum consciousness all converge toward the same invitation: to remain open to possibilities that exceed your current understanding while maintaining wisdom, discernment, and compassion in your relationships with yourself and others. The mystery of consciousness, whether individual or collective, whether classical or quantum, whether isolated or interconnected, remains beautifully unresolved. This uncertainty is not a failure of human knowledge, but rather a gift that keeps life interesting, maintains space for growth and discovery, and prevents us from becoming too attached to limited definitions of what's possible. As you carry these contemplations forward into your daily life, remember that the greatest laboratory for exploring consciousness is your own moment-to-moment experience. Every breath offers opportunities to notice the constructed nature of perception. Every memory reveals the creative processes of reconstruction, and every choice demonstrates the participatory relationship between awareness and reality. The boundaries between science and spirituality, between individual and collective consciousness, between past and future, between possible and actual, are far more fluid and interpenetrating than our everyday thinking typically recognizes. Living with appreciation for this fluidity can bring greater creativity, compassion, and wonder to every aspect of your life. Whether the Mandela Effect represents false memories, parallel universe bleed-through, or quantum consciousness effects, it serves as a gentle teacher, reminding us that existence itself remains gloriously, mysteriously, beautifully uncertain. In that uncertainty lies infinite possibility for growth, discovery, and transformation. As you rest in this moment of quiet contemplation, consider a curious possibility that emerges when we examine the deepest implications of our exploration. What if the version of yourself that exists 5 years from now has already been shaped by the choices you're making in this very instant? Not in the conventional sense of cause and effect, but through something far more mysterious that some interpretations of quantum mechanics suggest might be possible. The concept of retrocausality in quantum physics demonstrates that certain quantum events can influence their own past conditions. While this phenomenon is limited to microscopic scales and doesn't directly apply to human experience, it raises profound questions about the nature of time and influence that extend far beyond the laboratory. This remains a proven quantum mechanical effect, though its implications for larger scales of reality are purely speculative. Take a gentle breath and notice how this moment contains not just your current awareness, but echoes of every previous moment that led you here, and whispers of every future possibility that might unfold from this point forward. Your consciousness exists at the intersection of memory and anticipation, past and future, creating an eternal present that somehow encompasses all of time within its embrace. Dr. Yakir Aharonov's theoretical work on quantum mechanics suggests that quantum systems might be influenced by both their past and future boundary conditions simultaneously. This concept, known as the two-state vector formalism, remains highly speculative when applied beyond quantum systems, but it offers a fascinating framework for understanding how present moments might be shaped by influences flowing both backward and forward through time. The practice of meditation often reveals this temporal richness of present moment experience. As you settle into stillness, you might notice how each breath contains memories of previous breaths and anticipations of breaths to come, creating a kind of temporal wholeness that transcends the usual linear progression of moments. This subjective experience doesn't prove anything about the physics of time, but it offers a glimpse into the complex temporal nature of consciousness itself. Some contemplative traditions describe advanced practitioners developing what they call timeless awareness, a state of consciousness where past, present, and future are all one present, and future are experienced as a unified whole rather than separate sequential events. While these experiences cannot be scientifically validated, they point toward the possibility that consciousness might have access to temporal dimensions that ordinary thinking doesn't typically recognize. Within this contemplative space, we encounter something beautiful about how individual transformation seems to ripple outward into collective experience in ways that transcend normal communication channels. The changes you make in your own consciousness, the healing you accomplish in your personal relationships, and the wisdom you cultivate through contemplative practice somehow seem to contribute to a larger transformation that extends far beyond your individual life. This phenomenon, while not scientifically proven, has been observed by contemplatives across cultures and throughout history. When individuals engage deeply with practices that expand their awareness and compassion, they often report sensing connections with others who are engaged in similar work, even when separated by vast distances and cultural differences. This remains a subjective experience without scientific validation, yet its consistency across traditions suggests something meaningful about the interconnected nature of consciousness. The Global Coherence Initiative, led by the HeartMath Institute, investigates whether human heart rhythm patterns might influence and be influenced by geomagnetic field fluctuations. While their research remains preliminary and controversial, It raises intriguing questions about how individual emotional states might participate in larger planetary rhythms and cycles. This represents early-stage research with no scientific consensus, but it illustrates how our understanding of consciousness and environmental systems continues to evolve. As you reflect on your own journey of growth and awakening, notice how the insights you've gained and the healing you've experienced seem to naturally want to be shared with others. This isn't just psychological generosity, though that's certainly part of it. There seems to be something about expanded awareness that naturally seeks to contribute to the well-being of the larger whole of which it recognizes itself to be a part. The butterfly effect in chaos theory demonstrates how small changes in complex systems can have large-scale consequences that unfold over time. While this principle applies to weather systems and other physical phenomena, some researchers wonder whether similar principles might apply to consciousness and social systems, though this remains purely speculative. Dr. Rupert Sheldrake's concept of morphic resonance, while not accepted by mainstream science, suggests that patterns of activity in one system might influence similar patterns in other systems across space and time. Applied metaphorically to consciousness development, this might suggest that the contemplative work you do in your own awareness contributes to making similar transformations more accessible to others who engage in related practices. Here we encounter perhaps the most practical and immediately accessible aspect of everything we've explored together. Regardless of whether consciousness influences parallel universes exist, whether quantum mechanics allows them, or whether timeline shifts represent literal reality changes, the cultivation of present moment awareness offers measurable benefits that can transform your daily experience in profound ways. The practice of mindful attention, supported by decades of neuroscience research, demonstrates that conscious awareness can literally reshape brain networks associated with emotional regulation, attention, creativity, and social connection. These changes occur through well-understood neuroplasticity mechanisms that don't require any quantum mechanical explanations, yet they represent some of the most remarkable transformations available to human beings. When you bring gentle attention to your breath, notice sounds in your environment, or simply observe thoughts arising and passing away without getting caught up in their content, you're engaging in a form of consciousness training that has measurable effects on stress hormones, immune function, and overall well-being. This isn't mystical or supernatural, but rather represents the natural capacity of awareness to influence the biological systems that support it. Dr. Sarah Lazar's research at Harvard Medical School reveals that regular meditation practice can increase cortical thickness in brain regions associated with attention and sensory processing, while reducing activity in the amygdala, the brain's alarm center. These changes create lasting improvements in emotional resilience, cognitive flexibility, and the ability to respond rather than react to challenging circumstances. The beautiful paradox of contemplative practice is that the more deeply you rest in present moment awareness, the more naturally your actions seem to align with wisdom, compassion, and effectiveness in addressing whatever challenges arise in your life. This alignment doesn't happen through force or effort, but rather through the natural intelligence that is clear and becomes available when consciousness is no longer obstructed by excessive thinking or emotional reactivity. As you experiment with bringing mindful attention to ordinary activities like walking, eating, or having conversations, you might notice how this quality of presence transforms even the simplest experiences into opportunities for wonder, connection, and insight. The world doesn't change, but your capacity to appreciate its richness and respond to its challenges expands significantly. As our journey together draws toward its close, we find ourselves not with final answers, but with an infinitely expanding spiral of questions that seem to deepen and multiply with each insight we have encountered. This is the natural result of any genuine exploration into the nature of consciousness, reality, and the mysterious relationship between mind and world. The Mandela Effect has served as our gentle guide into territories where memory meets mystery, where individual experience touches collective reality, and where the boundaries between possible and actual become beautifully uncertain. Whether these phenomena represent cognitive quirks, quantum mechanical effects, or something else entirely, they have opened doorways into wonder that extend far beyond their initial puzzles. Each question we've explored has revealed layers beneath layers of additional questions. The nature of memory leads to questions about time, identity, and the construction of personal narrative. The possibility of parallel universes opens into investigations of consciousness, observation, and the role of awareness in shaping experience. The malleability of reality touches on philosophy, physics, and the deepest mysteries of existence itself. This proliferation of questions is not a failure to find answers, but rather evidence that we've been engaging with profound mysteries that have captivated human beings throughout history. The greatest minds in science, philosophy, and contemplative traditions have grappled with these same fundamental puzzles about the nature of mind, reality, and our place within the larger cosmos. The recognition that consciousness remains largely mysterious despite centuries of investigation is simultaneously humbling and liberating. It keeps life interesting, maintains space for continued discovery, and prevents us from becoming too attached to limited definitions of what's possible. Every moment offers opportunities for fresh insight into the nature of awareness and its relationship to the world we share. Take a final deep breath and notice how your own consciousness has been the constant companion throughout this entire exploration. Every concept we've examined has been understood through the same awareness that is present right now. Reading these words, this awareness itself remains the deepest mystery and the most immediate reality, worthy of a lifetime of gentle investigation and appreciation. The questions that remain unanswered are invitations rather than problems, doorways rather than walls, opportunities for continued wonder rather than obstacles to understanding. In embracing these questions with curiosity rather than frustration, we participate in the ancient human tradition of exploring the boundaries of knowledge with humility, courage, and wonder. In these final moments together, remember that the most sophisticated laboratory for investigating consciousness and reality is not found in any university or research institution, but rather in the intimate details of your own daily experience. Every moment offers opportunities to observe the phenomena we've discussed, to notice the constructed nature of perception, and to appreciate the mysterious relationship between awareness and world. The next time you encounter a memory that doesn't quite match external evidence, pause and appreciate the window it opens into the reconstructive nature of memory itself. Whether you're dealing with a simple mistake or something more mysterious, you're witnessing firsthand the creative processes that shape your personal narrative and sense of identity. When you notice your expectations influencing your perception of familiar environments, you're observing the predictive nature of consciousness that neuroscience has revealed. When you experience moments of unusual synchronicity or meaningful coincidence, you're encountering the edge where individual experience meets the larger patterns of existence. The practices we've touched on throughout this journey, from present moment awareness to gentle attention training, offer practical ways to explore these mysteries directly. You don't need special equipment or advanced degrees to investigate the nature of consciousness. Your own awareness, approached with curiosity and patience, contains all the tools necessary for profound discovery. The scientific method, contemplative practice, and philosophical inquiry all offer valuable approaches to understanding consciousness and reality, but none of them alone captures the full richness of these mysteries. The integration of rigorous investigation with open wonder, of healthy skepticism with genuine curiosity, creates the most fertile ground for continued exploration and insight. As you move forward from this exploration, carry with you not specific beliefs about parallel universes or quantum consciousness, but rather an enhanced appreciation for the mystery that surrounds you constantly. This quality of wonder is one of the most valuable gifts that consciousness can offer, keeping life fresh, meaningful, and eternally interesting. The boundaries between science and spirituality, between individual and collective consciousness, between known and unknown, are far more fluid and interpenetrating than our everyday thinking typically recognizes. Living with appreciation for this fluidity brings greater creativity, compassion, and wisdom to every aspect of your existence. Remember always that these explorations of consciousness and reality remain largely speculative and should be held lightly rather than dogmatically. The relationship between quantum mechanics and large-scale phenomena like memory and perception is not scientifically established, and we must maintain appropriate humility about the limits of current knowledge while remaining open to continued discovery. Until we meet again in another quiet corner of mystery and wonder, rest well in the beautiful uncertainty that characterizes existence itself. Know that the deepest questions about consciousness, reality, and our place within the cosmic story remain forever just beyond complete understanding, inviting us always toward greater curiosity, wisdom, and compassion. If these contemplations about the fluid nature of memory, the mysteries of consciousness, and the malleable relationship between awareness and reality have stirred something in your understanding, you might find our previous exploration equally thought-provoking. In What If Consciousness Exists Beyond the Brain, we delved into the profound possibility that awareness itself might transcend the physical boundaries we typically assume, examining research that suggests consciousness could be far more fundamental to the fabric of existence than mainstream science currently recognizes. The journey we've shared together has been one of gentle wonder, a quiet expedition through territories where memory meets mystery and consciousness touches the very fabric of existence itself. We've explored how the solid ground of personal recollection can sometimes shift beneath our feet, how collective memories can diverge from recorded history, and how the nature of reality itself might be far more fluid than our everyday experience suggests. As you rest in this moment of reflection, perhaps feeling the weight of your body against the chair or bed where you're listening, notice how these explorations have opened something in your awareness. Not answers necessarily, but a different quality of questioning, the kind of curious attention that makes ordinary moments feel suddenly rich with possibility. We've travelled together through the landscapes of false memory and quantum speculation, through testimonies of timeline shifts and the cutting-edge territories of consciousness research. Along the way, we've encountered not just intellectual puzzles, but invitations to wonder about the deepest mysteries of human experience. The relationship between mind and reality, between individual awareness and the larger cosmos, between the stories we tell ourselves and the truth that might lie beyond all storytelling. What emerges most clearly from this journey is not any particular conclusion about parallel universes or quantum consciousness, but rather an appreciation for the profound mystery that surrounds us constantly. Whether the Mandela Effect represents simple memory errors, glimpses of alternate realities, or something else entirely, it serves as a gentle teacher, reminding us that existence itself exceeds our current understanding in ways both beautiful and humbling. The practices we've touched on, from mindful attention to present moment awareness, offer practical pathways for exploring these mysteries directly in your own experience. They require no special beliefs or complex theories, only the willingness to pay attention to what's actually happening in consciousness from moment to moment. In this simple attention, profound discoveries await. Perhaps this morning you didn't switch timelines at all. Perhaps instead you simply woke up to the recognition that the boundaries between memory and reality, between individual consciousness and the vast cosmos, are far more permeable than you ever imagined. The Mandela Effect, with all its mysterious collective memories and impossible recollections, may be less about parallel universes and more about the profound mystery of awareness itself. As you carry these contemplations into your daily life, remember that the greatest discoveries often begin not with answers, but with better questions. Questions about the nature of memory, the malleability of identity, and the participatory relationship between consciousness and the world we share. Whether you've glimpsed alternate realities or simply witnessed the creative, reconstructive power of your own mind, you've touched something profound about what it means to be aware in an endlessly mysterious universe. The next time you encounter a memory that doesn't match the evidence, or a moment when reality feels subtly different than expected, pause and appreciate the wonder of that experience. You're standing at the edge of human understanding, where science meets mystery and consciousness touches the deepest questions about existence itself. Until we meet again in another quiet corner of wonder, rest well in the beautiful uncertainty that surrounds us all.